This introduction of Barnabas, it starts off with something extraordinary that he did. No one in the church was required to sell their land. God didn't require that of anyone. It wasn't the written thing. It wasn't like the apostles were saying, okay, now everyone sell your land and bring all the money in. It wasn't a requirement, but Barnabas did it. He felt moved by God to say, I'm just so all in on this mission, what we're here to do. I have land, it's going to God. It's going to be used by the church. He had this radical faith to put his money where his mouth was, and he gave self-sacrificially. And so Barnabas really right here, he epitomizes the spiritual sharing, or the spirit of sharing that was kind of engulfing the church at the time. And so this whole chapter, chapter 4, it ends with this beautiful picture of a self-giving church. It ends with this picture of Barnabas, a hero that we can look up to. However, in the beginning of the next chapter, we see how a gospel-centered, spirit-filled church can face hostility, endangers its unity from the inside. No one required Ananias and Sapphira to sell their land, but they wanted a reputation like Barnabas. They wanted the reputation of Barnabas without having the compassion of Barnabas. They were spiritual posers. Lies are a symptom of sin nature. Lying is so opposite to God's nature that someone who so easily and proudly does it shows that God is not their father. Here's the main problem with Ananias. He didn't value the holiness. He didn't value how holy God is. And because he didn't value the holiness of God, he minimized his sin. If you call yourself a Christian and you minimize your sin, what you are doing is you are devaluing the cross. This is why from our pulpits and from our small groups, anywhere where we preach and teach, we must constantly and consistently preach against sin. Sin cannot be minimized because God's holiness must be revered. This is dangerous for a church. A church that's not willing to talk about sin is a dangerous church to be in, because it's a church that doesn't revere the holiness of God, and it's a church that doesn't value the cross of Christ. When you're soft on sin, what you do is you tear away at the unity of the church. You create a church that cannot be united on the gospel because it has not received the full gospel. I said earlier, what unites us isn't our own making or our own doing. What unites us is the gospel of Christ. It's God bringing his people together. If you devalue the holiness of God and devalue the value of the cross, minimize sin, you don't have unity. You have a house of cards. And it's not going to be a question of if it falls apart, it's going to be when it falls apart. You have nothing to unify around. We can be hard on sin and loving to sinners. Loving someone consumed in sin does not look like excusing them. It looks like showing them that Jesus took their place on the cross. Your sin is like my sin. Maybe they look different. Maybe it's a different type of sin, but they cost the same. You see, Jesus, who never sinned, he became sin. He took my place. He took your place so that the holy, righteous wrath of God against sin could be satisfied. It seems counterintuitive, but a lot of things that are deeply true are. We will be more united if we defend the gospel by taking a hard stance against sin. When we see sin in our church, we should not tolerate it. We should not excuse it. What we do is we expose it, and we help our brothers and our sisters who are in it. And we don't do it in a way that makes them feel bad or feel worse or to put them down. We do it in a way to build them up. We say, sister, you're dealing with something that is just not right, but let me show you there's a way out of it. There's a way through it. We give them grace and we help restore them. And as a church, when that happens, we're all stronger for it. We are more united than ever. You see, the gospel, it frees us from having to impress everybody. It frees us from addictions to material things and to wealth. The gospel frees us from pretending and from putting on masks when we go into church. The gospel, it frees us from lying, and it frees us from stealing, and it frees us from deceiving. The gospel sets our mind on the glory that is to come, what God is planning to reveal. The gospel shows us that our real identity is in Christ. It's not what we make or keep for ourselves. The gospel says, I'm going to give what I have because it's all going to burn anyway. And I'd rather make more friends in this world, friends that I can take with me into the next. I'd rather be used by God. I'd rather see his kingdom come than build my own kingdom that will fall.